So today I'm going to read a poem, and then I'm going to take that poem and I'm going to sample it and turn it into a sound collage. So it's a seasonal activity, a festive solstice event. And it was all prompted by this mug. See if I can get that. It's hard for you to see, and that's part of the point. It's a polar bear outlined on a white mug. There you go. You can just see it, and it's important. It's a polar bear in the snow, and that reminded me of the Wallace Stevens poem "Snowman in the Snow," which I think is what that's called. Although in my mind I also call it "The Mind of Winter." So what I'm going to do today is read that poem, and then splice it up in my Morphogene Eurorack module, which is over there off camera to my side, and kind of identify the different phonemes of the sample, which is a technique or an approach or a compositional genre that I particularly like. I've talked about it before. The one of the pieces that really triggered my interest in composition is by Luciano Berio, called Omaggio a Joyce. And Kathy Barbarian, the soprano, read a section from Molly's soliloquy at the end of Ulysses, and then Berio had that on tape, spliced it up, and created this sort of swirling, ethereal sort of sound that I've always loved. Similar to the Stockhausen Gesangte Junglinge piece, there's this effervescent sound that can be arrived at by using the voice as a sound source, but broken down into these articulate phonemes. More recently, I'll put a link to my T.S. Eliot piece that I did last year, or maybe 5 years ago now. Time has lost its meaning. And there's an entire album that I made using Philip Larkin voice as a source, called Cod Poetics. Let's see if I can dig that out and link that. But for today, Snowman in the Snow, Polar Bear in the Polar Bear. I'm going to read the Wallace Stevens poem, One Must Have a Mind of Winter. You know, before I do that, though, let me just reminisce a little bit further, because inspired by that Berio piece, I had the opportunity to work in the music studio at College Park in Maryland, in an inter-degree year. I was not yet enrolled anywhere, but I was taking courses, and they had a Fairlight synthesizer, which at the time, like in 91, was a real investment and a real opportunity. So I learned a lot about tape techniques. The professor who ran the studio and who taught the seminar insisted that we all work with tape before we got our hands on the Fairlight. And so we worked with maybe 6 inches of tape and spliced it and retyped. 6 inches of tape is like a blink of an eye. And I've never gotten over how resource intensive that work is, and how we just don't realize digitally how easy it is to do this stuff that composers like Berio and Stockhausen took months, years to work on, because they had to do it all splice by splice. And if they fucked it up, they kind of couldn't go back. Or they could, but it was difficult. And maybe, I don't know, I never did it. Delia Derbyshire, writing the Doctor Who theme, had the tape rolled out on a hallway for 60 feet to do edits. Unbelievable. And it's all on our laptops, it's all on our iPads. Jesus, it's all on my phone now. Anyway, I digress. I took a sample of Dylan Thomas reading from his poem Winter's Tale, and I did a pretty good job with it. I think somewhere I have a cassette of the piece. I wish I could find it. I'd be ashamed if I've lost it. But the Dylan Thomas quote was, "And she rose with him, flowering in her melting snow." You can see flowering in a melting snow. The piece I've done here, I didn't spend enough time on, so I'm not backing away from it, but I like really constructed gestures, and some of this is a bit loopy, which is fine. I wanted to get across an idea, but I think if I were to do this with more deliberation, I would really look to extend the flow of each word and have these moments, these gestures. I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend more time over the holidays with this, making each gesture just a little bit more independent, a little bit more distinct. This is a bit crunched up. I'm going to put the whole thing on Bandcamp. It is a little over 2 minutes. So I'll play the whole thing here as well, but it'll be on Bandcamp. Easier to download that way, along with the TSLA piece and the Larkin stuff. The Larkin album is a whole album, and in no particular instance in the Larkin piece are you clear what you're hearing. It's a little bit different from this. Anyway, I think that those were the points. Yeah, this mug, I made a point of saying this mug is like a Proustian moment, right? I didn't dip anything in it, but looking at the mug prompted a full array of memories about this Wallace Stevens poem. This poem and what is it? The Fire Fangled, the Palm Tree at the End of Time. The Palm Tree at the End of Time by Wallace Stevens is kind of the summer solstice poem, and this poem is winter solstice. And it really does. It captures the idea of being a step removed. There's a line right at the beginning. One must have a mind of winter. And this mind of winter is a position. It's a move, just a step removed. It's a step removed from the immediate phenomena, and it is available through stillness. And there's a kind of austere quality to it that's reflected in the frost, the cold, and the snow. And the solstice time, the winter solstice, is like when a pendulum that's maybe set to a spiral in the summer gradually winds down slowly, 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 and then stops. So here's the poem. One must have a mind of winter to regard the frosts and the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land, full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place. For the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself, beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. So, Bob's your uncle, as they say. So I started off, so let me just talk over the piece for a little bit. Here's the start. And you can see my spectrogram here. the this spectrum shows the whole piece. I've got it zoomed out, and you can see the bulk of the frequency of my spoken voice is down here in this sort of 86 to 258. But you can also see how powerful the formants are in human voice. I mean, we have rich spoken voices that allow us to articulate sound in meaningful ways. We use our ability to shape formants with our mouths and tongue to create meaning that passes into your ear and then gets translated. And you can see how rich this is in our voice. Let me zoom in a little bit, because once I zoom in, you can start to see how the rhythm of the piece is created with my focus on the fricatives and the plosives.
You treating kind of those always about the back and the frost and the boughs of the back the regard to my one.
So that's nice. That's one of those gestures that I like to talk about.
Crusted with snow, winter, and the frost have a mind of winter, must have a mind of winter, the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow.
Yeah, I misspoke earlier. There's some nice gestural shapes in here, and you can see you can see how it tends to go on. This section here, if I can get there. Builds up a little bit. Yeah, there's the shape. The shape that recurs occasionally. You hear the wah 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 wah.
The back
this video. Then this section here, what I was really looking for, very characteristic. I do that a lot, and the morphogene is great for getting that. It's not really a stutter, is it? It's more like a it's almost like amplitude modulation. That sound appears as a punctuation throughout the piece in a couple of sections, and then it ends, sort of fading away. I like it. So have at it. Download from Bandcamp and listen to your heart's content, and enjoy the solstice. I'm going to try to keep putting out some videos over the next couple of weeks, but it is end of year. I've got one more Messiaen piece that I'm hoping to get out in the next few days before the end of the weekend. Been working on the analysis long enough. I need to just set it aside and do it. So other than that, keep your wits about you, and like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that kind of stuff, etc.